After many years, Monster Rancher is back. Monster Rancher 1 and 2 DX is here for the Nintendo Switch, a package of games that have enhanced ports of the original Monster Rancher and its sequel that came out on the PlayStation many moons ago. I've been playing it over the last few days, and in today's video, I'll be giving you my thoughts on the entire package, and if it's worth diving into for new and returning players. So hang on, make sure to subscribe to the channel, and let's dive right into Monster Rancher 1 and 2 DX, the Nintendo Switch. So since this release is technically 2 games, we're going to divide this review into 3 parts. We'll kick things off with Monster Rancher 1, then follow with its sequel, Monster Rancher 2, and then we'll finally bring it all back around with overall thoughts on the package, and if it's worth diving into. Also, because of how in-depth these games are, seriously, they got a lot of mechanics and fine details under the hood for both games. We're going to keep things brief and quickly cover topics for parts of this package. If I were to give a really detailed review of both games, honestly, we'd be here all day, and for the sake of time, I'm going to cover just the main points. Okay, sound good? With that said, we're going to kick things off with Monster Rancher 1. The original Monster Rancher came out for the PlayStation way back in 1997. The first part of this package attempts to bring that same game back, but with some much needed fixes and corrections, and some additional features. First things first, and it has to be said, and I don't like to harp on visuals, but this is probably going to be the first thing you notice out of the gate. Yeah, the game pretty much retains its classic PlayStation look. Some text has been cleaned up, and a few visual touches here and there, and of course the game is running in HD, but beyond that, all them chunky blocks and pixels are there. So do not expect a complete visual makeover going on. I find it charming myself, but I can imagine some newer players wondering why they didn't take the time to give it more visual flourish. Okay, with that elephant in the room aside, let's talk about gameplay. The goal of Monster Rancher is that you obtain monsters either by using the market, using the shrine, or combining monsters, more on that in a bit, and then taking them to your ranch to train and raise them. From there, you enter into battles and competitions to advance and become number 1. This is not like Pokemon or any RPG for that matter. This is a simulation game, as you need to balance your funds and go through many trials and errors to find success. You can spend many hours trying to find the right or wrong way to that success, to raising your monsters, and discover many secrets. And honestly, that's what makes the game fun. When you finally understand what to do and get a super powerful monster that takes you to the top, it is rewarding. The big gimmick for this game back then, and its following sequels, was the ability to create monsters from CDs that you own. You'd go to the shrine, and when prompted, you open the disc tray and pop a disc in, and the game would generate a monster based off that particular CD. It was cool as hell to a young kid like myself back in the day. I would spend hours trying disc after disc, and I'm pretty sure because of the sequel, that's why my original PlayStation died. But flash forward to today, you don't have the ability anymore. But Tecmo has found a pretty ingenious way that honestly makes it easier to find particular monsters as opposed to owning their physical media from long ago. Now you're prompted with a screen that allows you to input keywords, titles and name of the artist to generate monsters. If you look up a name of an artist, you'll get a long list of names for similar music CDs, and honestly, that's pretty impressive that they have a huge list available. The bad side to this method is it only uses music CDs as opposed to other discs that you could use with the original PlayStation release, like game discs. That aside, it does give you the ability to obtain monsters without the physical media, so a rare music CD monster is now at your grasp with just a few button presses. Speaking of rare monsters, the game will not let you generate rare monsters until certain conditions are met. The game will prompt you if there's a certain monster you cannot generate. You can unlock the ability to spawn certain monsters by completing objectives, such as getting rare items, completing events, ranking up, and even letting your monster die. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention one thing. Your monster, it can die. It can die because of you taking poor care of it, old age, and even letting it get knocked out in battle. All these things could possibly lead to monster deaths. Again, I want to get back to the original point. This is not Pokemon. Wrong choices can lead to really poor outcomes. Luckily though, at any point you can freeze monsters to bring back later, or in the case of old age, save them from eventual death. This freezing mechanic is very useful for later functions such as combining monsters or online battling, which we'll get to in the third part of this review. Finally though, let's get to the really fun part, the battling. At any point, depending on the schedule, you can enter battles with your monsters. Each monster has text that they can use when you press the A button. In some instances, especially if they are young, they might not always attack with it. You can gain or decrease distance to the opponent by pressing the R or L buttons, and depending on the distance, you can use a particular tech. This takes up guts, and guts will refill over time, over the course of a fight. So it's a balance of accuracy, distance, guts meter, and hoping your monster listens. It'll take a few fights to get used to this battling style, but once you do, it's pretty easy to understand. You'll have to keep in mind a few things about the fights though. One is you want to make sure your monster is well rested before and after the fight, and two, you want to avoid being KO'd. Being KO'd can have really negative effects, up to causing death to your monster, so you want to avoid putting it into fights it cannot win, or give up before it happens. That said, this is the primary mode you want to strive for, as it leads to a lot of advancements in the game. Beyond the game itself, this DX release adds some much needed changes and improvements to the original. I've already covered the new summoning system for monsters, but in addition we have additional freeze slots that doubles from 10 to 20. This is a lifesaver, as you're now able to retain and combine monsters more easily. There is also a high speed mode that allows the game to be run faster, that can cut down on a lot of the tedium of the game. Another neat perk is the training record, which keeps track of what your monsters do each week, which is a lifesaver too. You had to, especially if you were raising and constantly switching between multiple monsters all the time, or else you would get lost or make the wrong choice. There's a new online battling system too, but again, we'll get to that later in this video. Finally, to note, there are some much needed fixes and corrections. The other Monster Rancher had some errors with some monsters and some unintended issues that has been corrected in this release, as well as the fact that it is much more stable than the original game. The original release was known to be finicky at times, even have freezing issues, and luckily we don't have any of those issues here. Also, it's worth saying the load times are pretty non-existent for the most part, and everything runs so fast now. Need to quit out and load back in? You can do it within seconds, as opposed to waiting for loading like it was back in the day. There's also autosaves too, just in case you need them. With all these changes and improvements, this is absolutely the best way to play the original Monster Rancher. I was finding myself really getting into a groove with the DX release of this original game, and just enjoyed really zipping around faster than I could ever possibly could on the PS1 release. But, and there is a big but, we have Monster Rancher 2 here, which is the game everyone talks more about, for good reason. Monster Rancher 2 is everything that Monster Rancher 1 has, but more of. More monsters, more battles, more items, more secrets, more everything. Tecmo really took everything they learned from the first game and just amped it up to really create an awesome game. And you're going to quickly discover while playing it why it's the one talked about the most in the series. A lot of the features from the first game return. Obviously you have the Monster Ranch and the returning shrine and disc system for creating monsters, so a lot of what I described in Monster Rancher 1 will apply to this game. Same goes for the battling mechanics, that system as well as the battling schedule. Jobs have been replaced by training drills, and now you have errand trees that allow your monster to go on 4-week trips to learn new techs as well as level up stats. In addition, there's a bunch of new items to obtain to help you in raising your monster in the shop, as well as quests you can go on to obtain secret items. Oh, and speaking of secrets, there is a lot in this game, so expect a lot of events to happen as you play this game. The more you play this sequel, the more you appreciate how much there is to do, the overall polish and balance, and just the discoverability of it all. It's really much more fleshed out compared to the first game. The DX version of Monster Rancher 2 has also benefited from additional updates. Again, like the first game, You have additional free slots now from 10 to 20, as well as having the high-speed mode for fast gameplay. The training record feature is here too, as well as the online upload system for battling. But Monster Rancher 2 gets even more goodies in this release. Monster Rancher 2 already has an increased roster compared to the first game, but in this release we get 27 new monsters added, including ones that were exclusive to certain regions, which makes this a definitive version by far. We also have access to brand new background music arrangements in this release. It's a really nice touch, and I really do like the new arrangements. Again, this is a definitive release of a game that is a certified classic. And that finally brings us around to the total package. Well, first I want to touch on something that I previously mentioned, and that is online battles and tournaments. Yes, there is a way to register your frozen monsters in both titles and compete with them online. Koei Tecmo is supposed to kick things off with a big tournament for the release of the game in North America, but on paper this edition is amazing and has extended gameplay that the previous titles could not have back in the day. At least not to this extent. Now, due to this game being so new and playing prior to the official release, I really couldn't use this feature yet, but I imagine in the coming days and months this is really going to be fleshed out in a fun experience for hardcore Monster Rancher players. If you're a returning player, honestly, you're really happy with the updates. Yes, visually, it probably could have used more polish, but Tecmo stuck to the retro look, but added much needed changes and additions to both titles. And they really make these the definitive versions to play. If you've had interest in playing these games before, but never had the chance, this is a good jumping in point. It's fast, snappy, and addicting once you understand the gameplay. And for new players who maybe don't know much about these games, my advice to you is, if you're looking for something different from the normal monster affair, and if you're patient and willing to learn from in-game mistakes, you will have a rewarding experience ahead of you. And if after this review you decide it's not your thing, I understand, it's not for everyone's taste. But for myself, it takes me back and I'm already addicted. And that's my review for Monster Rancher 1 and 2 DX. I'm so happy to have these on the Nintendo Switch, and it's great having it portable too. One thing that is also good to note is there are a lot of resources out there online, especially for Monster Rancher 2, and I'm sure there will be more added in the coming months. So if you feel stuck, need advice, there are guides and tips out there. Anyway, if you like this review, give it a thumbs up, lets me know that you appreciate it, and if you made it this far in the review, give yourself a pat on the back. I know this was a pretty lengthy review, but then again, there was a lot to talk about with these games. They have a lot going on. Anyway, if you're not a subscriber, you should consider becoming one. I put out a bunch of new videos each and every week on the Nintendo Switch for this channel, plus I cover some other gaming stuff too. So subscribe so you never miss a single video. Also, shout out to the Kaiju Club Patreons. Thank you so much for your continued support and being a Patreon member. If you want to additionally support this channel, check out the link on screen right now to access the Patreon. And finally, thank you for watching, thank you for subscribing, have a wonderful day, and I'll catch you next time. Thank you.